The sun was slipping beneath the horizon when Officer Claire Donovan pulled her cruiser into the nearly empty gas station at the edge of Route 19. The sky was smeared with the last streaks of orange and purple, and the air had that dusty chill that came just before nightfall in the small Arizona town of Hollister Ridge. She killed the engine, exhaled deeply, and rubbed her temples. It had been a long shift, 12 hours patrolling the rougher parts of the county where meth deals happened behind rundown motels and bar fights were as routine as sunsets. Claire had seen her share of chaos in the past 5 years on the force, but something about this town had changed lately. Fights were more violent, faces more desperate, and whispers about a new gang moving in had been spreading like wildfire. She pushed open the car door and stepped out, stretching her sore legs. The old man inside the gas station waved at her through the window, Frank, the owner. He'd been running this station for 30 years, and every cop in the county knew he made the best coffee within 50 miles. Claire smiled faintly and waved back before walking toward the store. As she passed the side of the building, she noticed a flicker of movement in the reflection of the glass door. A shadow, quick and subtle, slipped behind the dumpsters. Her instincts prickled. She stopped mid-step and rested her hand on the holster at her hip. Then she heard it, a faint metallic clatter like a bottle kicked over. She turned her head slowly. "Sheriff's Department," she called out firmly. "Who's back there?" No response, just the hum of the gas pumps and the faint whistle of wind across the road. She moved carefully, one step at a time, her hand steady on her weapon. The alley behind the gas station was narrow and half-lit by a single flickering bulb. Trash bins overflowed with cardboard and oil-stained rags. She could smell gasoline and something else, something acrid and sour. "Come out where I can see you," she ordered again. Then a voice came from the darkness, low, mocking, and rough. "Well, well, look what we got here. A lady cop all by herself." Claire tensed. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Leather jackets, tattoos creeping up their necks, the kind of men who didn't care about laws or consequences. She recognized one of them, Rex Collins, a known small-time thug with a long history of breaking and entering. The other 2 she didn't know, but their swagger told her enough. "Evening, officer," Rex sneered, his grin missing a tooth. "Didn't mean to startle ya. We were just talkin' a smoke break." Behind the gas station, Claire's tone was calm but sharp. "You know this is private property, Rex. You're trespassing." "Relax," he said, taking a step closer. "Ain't like we're hurting anybody." "Stay where you are," she warned. "Hands where I can see them." The 2 men behind him laughed quietly. One of them, tall and wiry, spat on the ground and muttered something under his breath. The air thickened with tension. Claire's instincts screamed danger. She knew calling for backup would take at least 15 minutes out here. 15 minutes was a lifetime in a situation like this. Rex tilted his head, eyes glinting under the yellow light. "You know, I always thought lady cops were supposed to be tough, but look at you, shacking already." Claire's jaw tightened. "Last warning, Rex, hands up." He raised his hands mockingly, then suddenly swung. The motion was too fast, something silver flashed in his hand. A knife. Claire dodged back, reaching for her gun, but the wiry man lunged from the side, grabbing her wrist. The gun clattered to the ground. She slammed her knee into his stomach and twisted free, but another blow landed across her shoulder, a steel pipe, swung by the 3rd man. Pain shot through her arm like fire. She stumbled but didn't fall. Her training kicked in. She reached for her baton and struck hard across Rex's face, sending him staggering back with a curse. "You crazy," he yelled, blood dripping from his nose. The wiry man recovered, snarling, "She's gonna regret that." They came at her all at once. Claire blocked, dodged, hit back, her movements fast but desperate. She landed another blow on the tall man's leg, but the other 2 overwhelmed her. A punch cracked across her jaw, stars bursting in her vision. She hit the ground hard, gravel digging into her palms. One of them kicked her side. Another tore the radio from her belt and threw it against the wall. It shattered. Rex crouched over her, breathing hard, his face twisted with fury. "You think you can talk down to me? You think you're better than us, huh?" She spat blood onto the ground and glared up at him. "You're under arrest." That made them laugh. Rex grabbed her collar, pulling her closer. "You ain't arrestin' nobody now." He raised the knife again. And that's when the sound came, deep, distant at first, but growing louder by the second. A rumble, a growl, the unmistakable thunder of motorcycle engines cutting through the night. All three men froze. Even Claire, half-dazed, turned her head toward the road. The engines grew louder. Then, from the shadows beyond the gas pumps, they appeared, 6 motorcycles, headlights blazing, roaring down the road like beasts of metal and flame. They rolled into the gas station parking lot and stopped in perfect sync, engines still idling, the night suddenly vibrating with menace. Their jackets bore a familiar insignia, the winged skull of the Hell's Angels. Rex cursed under his breath. "Oh, hell no." The bikers didn't speak at first. They dismounted one by one, boots hitting the ground with slow, deliberate thuds. The man in front was massive, built like a wall, with a gray beard that reached his chest and cold blue eyes that looked like they'd seen 100 fights and won them all. His vest bore the word President stitched in bold red. He looked around, taking in the scene. The broken radio, the blood, the woman on the ground, the knife in Rex's hand. Then he spoke, voice low and gravelly. "What the hell's going on here?" Rex hesitated, lowering the knife slightly. "Nothing, man, just a misunderstanding." The bearded man's eyes flicked to Claire, who was trying to push herself upright despite the pain. "That right, officer." Claire wiped the blood from her mouth. "These men attacked me." The words hung in the air like thunder. The bikers shifted. Their leader's face darkened. He turned back to Rex and his crew. "You boys got a death wish messin' with a cop." Rex tried to smile, but his voice cracked. "We didn't know she came at us first." Before he could finish, the biker leader stepped forward and backhanded him across the face so hard the sound cracked like a whip. Rex stumbled back, clutching his jaw. The leader's voice turned ice cold. "You touch one of ours or one of theirs, you answer to me." Claire blinked. "One of theirs." The Hell's Angels began closing in. The wiry man tried to bolt, but 2 bikers grabbed him by the arms and slammed him against the wall. Another kicked the steel pipe out of the third man's hand, sending it clattering into the dirt. "Please, man, we didn't," Rex started, but the bearded man's boot connected with his stomach, doubling him over. Claire tried to speak. "Hey, stop, don't." The leader looked at her. "He pulled a knife on you, didn't he?" She hesitated. "Yes, but—" "That's all I need to know." He turned back to the thugs. "You boys think you can play tough? Try pulling that stunt on someone who ain't armed with a badge." The bikers didn't kill them, but they made sure none of them would ever forget this night. Within seconds, Rex and his men were on the ground, groaning and broken, their pride stripped away. The leader wiped his hands, turned to Claire and offered her his arm. "You okay, officer?" She hesitated, still breathing hard. I'll live." He nodded. "Name Duke." "Claire," she said quietly, taking his hand. His grip was firm, surprisingly gentle for a man who looked carved from stone. Duke turned to his men. "Load these bastards into their truck and dump 'em at the sheriff's station. Tell M. Duke sent 'em." The bikers obeyed without question. Within minutes, the thugs were gone, dragged into their pickup like rag dolls. Claire leaned against the wall, her head spinning. Why did you help me?" Duke glanced at her cruiser, then at her badge. "Not every cop hates us, and not every angel's the devil the papers make us out to be. Besides," he gave a faint smirk, "your old man once pulled me out of a bar fight that would have landed me 20 years. Figured I owed the Donovan name one." She froze. "You knew my father?" "Sure did, Sergeant Michael Donovan, toughest son of a bitch I ever met. His tone softened. Didn't know he had a daughter on the force. Claire's throat tightened. He passed 3 years ago. Duke's jaw flexed. Sorry to hear that, he was a good man. For a long moment they just stood there, the cop and the outlaw, bound by a memory neither expected to share. The distant sound of sirens broke the silence. Frank must have called it in after hearing the commotion. Duke nodded toward the lights. That's your cue. You'll want to tell your boys the angels were just passing through. And what if they don't believe me? She asked. He smiled faintly. They will if they know what's good for M. He turned, walking toward his bike. His men followed, engines roaring to life one by one. Before he put on his helmet, he looked back at her. You take care of yourself, Officer Donovan. World's a lot meaner than it used to be. Then they were gone, taillights disappearing into the desert darkness, engines echoing into the night. When the patrol cars arrived minutes later, Claire was standing alone beside her cruiser, bloodied but unbroken, her gaze fixed on the road where the bikers vanished. She told her story, most of it anyway. The thugs were picked up a few miles down the highway, battered and bruised, claiming they'd been jumped by ghosts. But as she sat in her cruiser later, the night now quiet again, one thought kept replaying in her mind. The Hell's Angels saved me. And somewhere out there, a man named Duke had just rewritten everything she thought she knew about good and evil. 2 days had passed since the gas station incident, and yet Claire Donovan couldn't shake the sound of the motorcycles from her head. It had been a low, thunderous growl, like an omen rolling across the desert. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still see Duke's steady blue gaze under the flickering light, the dust swirling around him as he disappeared into the night. She had tried to bury the memory under paperwork, reports, and the sterile hum of the precinct, but it clung to her like a shadow. The sheriff's office was quieter than usual that morning. Lieutenant Grady, her superior, was packing near the whiteboard, a coffee mug in one hand and a frown deep enough to cut through stone on his face. Claire knew what was coming before he even looked her way. "Donovan," he said sharply, "in my office." She took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and followed him inside. The blinds were half closed, sunlight cutting thin stripes across the desk. Grady shut the door and turned to face her. "You want to explain to me why 3 known felons ended up outside our station, half dead with your name all over the report?" Claire stayed calm. "They attacked me behind the gas station, sir. I called for backup, but—" "But nothing," he interrupted, tossing a file onto the desk. "The report says a group of bikers intervened. You didn't name them." "I didn't know who they were," she lied smoothly. "They didn't stay long." Grady raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? Because the 3 dirtbags you arrested are telling a different story. Said a gang of Hell's Angels stomped them into the pavement after you called M in." Claire's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression steady. "You really believe what those men say?" "I don't believe anything until I see it for myself," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But the DA's office is already sniffing around. They don't like the idea of a cop being rescued by outlaw bikers. Makes the department look weak." "Would they rather I be dead?" Claire snapped before she could stop herself. Grady's eyes softened slightly, but his tone stayed firm. "I'm not saying that, Donovan. I'm saying you're walking on thin ice. You've been a damn good cop, but if the press catches wind of this, they'll eat us alive." "I understand," she said quietly. He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Go home, take the rest of the day, get some rest." She nodded and walked out, but as soon as she reached her car, she didn't go home. Her instincts told her this wasn't over, not by a long shot. By dusk, Claire was driving down Route 19 again, the same stretch of cracked road that led to nowhere but sand, scrub, and broken dreams. The gas station lights flickered in the distance, and for a moment she wondered if she was making a mistake. But something deep inside her needed answers. She pulled into the lot, parked near the same spot where it all happened, and stepped out. The night air was cool, thick with the smell of gasoline and dust. Frank wasn't there this time. The place looked empty. "Looking for someone, officer?" The voice came from the shadows near the back fence. Claire turned, hand instinctively brushing against her holster. Then he stepped out. Duke. Same black leather vest, same piercing blue eyes. Only now, without the chaos of that night, she could see the quiet gravity in his face, the kind of man who'd carried 1,000 regrets but never showed them. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "I could say the same," she replied. "I owe you one." He smirked. "Don't mention it. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Or maybe the right place," she said softly, "depending how you look at it." He studied her for a moment. "Cops don't usually talk that way." "Cops don't usually get saved by bikers," she said. That made him laugh, a rough, genuine sound that cut through the desert air. "Fair point." She hesitated before asking, "Why were you even out here that night?" The humor faded from his eyes. "We were tracking someone." "Who?" He paused, glancing toward the dark horizon. "You ever heard of the Iron Serpents?" Claire frowned. "Yeah, small-time gang, mostly running drugs across county lines." "They're not small-time anymore," he said grimly. "They've been pushing into our territory. Started bringing in harder stuff, fentanyl, guns, girls. Bad news all around." "So you're telling me the Angels are at war?" He met her gaze. "We're trying to keep the streets clean in our own way, not every fight about money." There was a sincerity in his voice she didn't expect. She'd grown up hearing that the Hells Angels were ruthless, lawless, untouchable. But the man standing before her wasn't what the world had told her to fear. "You could have told the cops," she said. "We could have helped." He shook his head. "Cops don't help us and we don't trust them. Your father was the only exception." Her heart skipped. "You said you knew him." "I did more than know him," Duke said quietly. "He once stopped a bloodbath between our guys and a rival club. Could have hauled us all in, but instead he talked both sides down. Said something I never forgot." "What's that?" He said, "Sometimes peace starts when somebody's willing to stand where bullets fly and not shoot back." Claire looked away, blinking hard. She remembered those words. Her father had said them to her once when she was a kid, after breaking up a violent domestic call. Hearing them now felt like a ghost whispering through the years. Before she could reply, the sound of engines broke through the night again. Only this time, not the familiar growl of Harley-Davidsons. This was sharper, meaner, the Iron Serpents. Duke's expression darkened instantly. "Get down." Claire ducked behind a gas pump as 3 motorcycles tore into the lot, their headlights cutting white slashes across the pavement. The riders wore black leather vests marked with a coiled serpent emblem. The lead rider, young, wiry, face hidden behind a skull bandana, revved his engine and shouted, "You shouldn't be here, old man. This is our turf now." Duke stepped forward calmly. "Your boss knows better than that." The man laughed. "Your boss is old news. Hollister Ridge belongs to the Serpents now." Claire watched, heart pounding. She knew she should call for backup, but something about the way Duke stood, unflinching, silent, kept her rooted to the spot. "You come here looking for a fight, son?" Duke asked. The rider smirked. "You could say that." Without warning, the man pulled a pistol from his waistband. Claire reacted before Duke did. She drew her weapon, shouting, "Drop it." The serpent turned, startled, his gun swinging toward her. The next second was chaos. 2 shots rang out, one from her, one from him. His bullet missed by inches, slamming into the pump behind her. Her shot hit his shoulder, spinning him backward off his bike. The others roared in rage. One of them gunned the engine and charged forward, aiming straight for Duke. But Duke moved like a man half his age. He grabbed a metal rod from the ground and swung it in a clean, brutal arc. It caught the front tire, flipping the bike sideways. The rider crashed hard. The third man fired blindly toward them, bullets ricocheting off metal. Claire ducked and returned fire, forcing him to retreat. Within seconds, the serpents fled into the night, engines wailing. Silence fell again, broken only by the hiss of a leaking fuel line and the sound of Duke breathing heavily beside her. She holstered her weapon, chest heaving. "You okay?" He nodded. "You shoot straight." "You're welcome," she said, catching her breath. "You realize this is gonna bring hell down on both of us." He gave a dry chuckle. "Wouldn't be the first time." Sirens wailed in the distance again, back up this time. Claire knew she had minutes before her fellow officers arrived. "Go," she said, "if they see you here." "I'm not running," he said, "not from this." "You don't have a choice," she insisted. "They'll blame you for the shooting. Please just go." Duke looked at her for a long moment. There was something unreadable in his expression, respect, maybe even trust. Finally, he nodded. "You're your father's daughter, all right." He swung a leg over his bike, started the engine, and said over the roar, "If you want to know what's really going on in this town, find a man named Carlito. Works out of the old freight yard on 5th. He's serpent-connected. But careful, he's not the kind you cuff twice." Then he was gone, swallowed by the night again, just as the patrol cars pulled in. The official report was messy. The serpent she shot survived, claimed self-defense, and had enough connections to make the DA's office nervous. The department didn't like that she'd been on Route 19 alone again, especially so soon after the first incident. Grady called her in the next morning. "You disobeyed a direct order, Donovan. I told you to take time off." "I wasn't on duty," she said. "I was clearing my head." By getting into another shootout, he threw a newspaper on the desk. The headline read, "Hell's Angels, Serpent War Escalates, Cop Caught in the Crossfire." Claire stared at the photo, grainy surveillance footage of her at the gas station, gun drawn. No Duke in sight, but the implication was clear. "They're gonna tear us apart over this," Grady muttered. "The press, the DA, internal affairs, hell, even the mayor's calling." "I did my job," Claire said firmly. "I stopped an armed suspect." He looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're suspended, effective immediately." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You can't be serious." "I don't have a choice," Grady said quietly. "Not till this dies down." She left the station numb, her badge and gun locked away behind the front desk. For the first time since joining the force, she felt powerless. But deep down, she knew she couldn't walk away, not now. Not when Duke had given her a name. Not when something darker was stirring under the surface of Hollister Ridge. That night, Claire drove to the old freight yard. The place looked abandoned, rusted containers, broken floodlights, wind howling through the empty structures. But as she got closer, she saw faint movement. Men, maybe 6 or 7, gathered near a fire barrel. One of them fit Duke's description. Short, heavyset, tattoos crawling up both arms. Carlita. She stayed in the shadows, watching. The men were talking low, their voices muffled by the wind. Then she heard it, clear enough to freeze her blood. "Shipment comes in Tuesday. If the Angels try anything, we burn the gas station and the cop who was there." Her stomach dropped. They were planning to kill her. She turned, moving back toward her car, but her foot hit a piece of loose gravel. It crunched. The men's heads snapped up. "Who's there?" someone shouted. Claire broke into a run, heart hammering. She ducked behind a stack of crates, pulling her phone out. No signal. She had to reach the road. But before she could, a voice behind her said, "You shouldn't have come here, Officer Donovan." Carlito, he was closer than she thought. A gun clicked behind her ear. "Now," he said, his tone almost amused, "you're gonna tell me where your biker boyfriend's hiding." She clenched her jaw. "You have no idea what you're starting." He grinned. "Oh, I think I do." And that's when the low rumble started again, soft at first, then rising, echoing across the metal yard like thunder. Carlito froze. Claire smiled faintly. You hear that? Headlights cut through the darkness as 6 motorcycles roared into the yard, engines screaming like war drums. The Hell's Angels. Duke was at the front. The serpents scrambled, shouting, firing wildly. Claire dove for cover as bullets sparked against steel. The Angels returned fire, not to kill but to disarm, overwhelm, and drive them out. Within seconds, chaos turned into retreat. Carlito tried to run, but Duke intercepted him, slamming him against a crate. You threaten one of mine, you answer to me. Claire stepped forward, breathing hard. He said they're moving a shipment Tuesday. Drugs, weapons, maybe worse. Duke looked at her, then at Carlito. You heard the lady. Carlito spat blood. You think you can stop this? The Serpents ain't just a gang anymore. They've got people in uniforms, in City Hall, even your own department. The words hit Claire harder than any punch. Before she could respond, red and blue lights flashed at the far end of the yard, sirens again. Go, she told Duke. They'll be here any second. He hesitated, eyes locked on hers. This ain't over, Claire. You got no idea how deep this goes. I'm starting to, she said. He gave a faint, grim nod. Then I'll be in touch. The Angels vanished into the night once again, just as the first patrol cars rolled in. Claire stood in the flickering light of the burning barrel, her heart still racing. This time there was no denying it. She was caught between 2 worlds. The badge on one side, the outlaw who saved her on the other, and somewhere in between lay the truth, dark, tangled, and ready to explode. As the wind swept across the yard, carrying the faint echo of engines fatting into the desert, she whispered to herself, Dad, what the hell have I gotten into? The desert was silent. Too silent. Claire Donovan sat alone in her small house on the edge of Hollister Ridge, the glow from the desk lamp cutting a weak circle of light through the darkness. A half-empty mug of coffee sat beside a pile of files, newspaper clippings and photos, everything she'd gathered on the Iron Serpents and the men backing them. She hadn't slept in 2 days. The memory of Carlito's words kept replaying in her mind. They've got people in uniforms, even your own department. At first, she wanted to dismiss it as a desperate lie. But when she started digging through arrest reports and shipment records, the pieces began to fit, too perfectly. Every major bust she and her father had made in the last 5 years, cases tied to cartel shipments or gun running, had been reassigned, rerouted, or lost in transit. Someone inside the department had been protecting the Serpents. And whoever it was, they were powerful enough to silence anyone who got close. A knock rattled her door. Her hand flew to her holster. She stood silently tense. Then came a voice she recognized. It's me. She opened the door. Duke stood there, dust on his boots, a cut on his forehead, and a look in his eyes that said he hadn't come to play games. We need to talk, he said. She stepped aside. Come in. He walked in and scanned the room, the maps, the photos pinned to the corkboard, her father's badge sitting beside a framed picture of the 2 of them. You've been busy. I've been trying to figure out what's really going on, she said, and I think I found it. He crossed his arms. Then you're already in deeper than you should be. I'm already suspended, she said dryly. Nothing left to lose. Duke gave a short laugh, but his eyes didn't soften. That's the same thing your old man said before everything went to hell. She frowned. What do you mean? He hesitated. Your dad didn't die in an accident, Claire. That crash on Route 7, it wasn't random. Her breath caught. What are you talking about? I didn't want to tell you before, Duke said. Didn't think it'd do any good. But since you're chasing ghosts, yeah, your father was digging into the Serpents too. He found out they were being protected by someone high up. Couple weeks later, his car went off the road. The brakes had been tampered with. Claire's legs felt weak. You're saying he was murdered. I'm saying someone wanted him quiet, Duke said, And now they're gonna want you quiet too." For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the desert wind through the window. Claire's throat was dry, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, she said, "Then we find them." Duke looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same fire that had once burned in her father. He nodded slowly. "Then we do it my way." The next night, the air over Hollister Ridge felt heavy, electric. The Angels clubhouse sat hidden behind an abandoned quarry a few miles out of town. Claire had never seen it before, just rumors whispered among cops. But now she was standing right at its gates. A few bikers eyed her warily as Duke led her inside. The air smelled of oil and smoke, and the low rumble of conversation filled the hall. On the far wall, a huge flag bore the Angels' insignia, red and white wings wrapped around a skull. "This is a bad idea," one of the bikers muttered as they passed. "She's a cop, Duke." "She's one of us tonight," Duke said simply. The room went quiet after that. He led her into a side office lined with maps, radios, and old photos. One picture caught her eye, her father, 20 years younger, standing beside Duke outside a bar. They were both smiling. It hit her like a punch to the gut. Duke poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. "We're hittin' the Serpents tomorrow night." "Where?" she asked. "Abandoned truck depot on the county line. That's where they're moving the shipment. Guns, drugs, maybe people. We can't let it roll out." "And what about the cops protecting them?" Duke's eyes darkened. "That's where you come in." He laid a file on the table. Inside were surveillance photos, grainy shots of men meeting in dark parking lots, exchanging envelopes. But one photo made her blood run cold. It was Lieutenant Grady, her boss. Her voice trembled. "No, that can't be." "He's the inside man," Duke said. "We've been watching him for months. He's been feeding the Serpents your department's schedules, routes, even officer locations. Your father found out. He tried to expose him." Claire's stomach turned. She remembered how close Grady had been to her dad, how he delivered the folded flag at the funeral, tears in his eyes. All of it felt sickening now. Duke poured another drink. "You still in?" Claire looked at the photo, then at Duke. "I'm not letting my father die for nothing." He nodded once. "Then tomorrow night we end this." The night of the raid came cold and windless. The desert sky was an ocean of black and stars. The Angels rode in first, their engines echoing through the empty expanse like war drums. Claire followed in an unmarked truck, heart pounding as the depot came into view, rows of old cargo trailers, rusting under the pale moonlight. Through binoculars she saw them, the Serpents, maybe a dozen of them, unloading crates into a black van. 2 SUVs were parked near the fence, government plates. "Guess the uniforms showed up early," Duke muttered. Claire's pulse spiked. "That's them, the dirty cops." Duke signaled to his men. "We do this clean. No one shoots unless they shoot first." He turned to Claire. "You stay in the truck, this ain't your fight." She looked him straight in the eye. "It is now." Before he could argue, the sound of gunfire shattered the night. Bullets sparked against steel as the Serpents spotted movement. The Angels hit back fast, rolling cover to cover, coordinated and ruthless. The air filled with the roar of engines and the crack of gunfire. Claire jumped out of the truck, weapon drawn, ducking behind a trailer. She saw one of the SUV's door open, a flashlight sweeping the yard. Then a familiar voice barked, "Hold your fire, she's here." "Grady." Her stomach twisted as he stepped into the light. Wearing plain clothes but holding a police-issued rifle. "Claire, what the hell are you doing here?" "Don't," she said, raising her gun. "I know everything, Grady. You killed my father." He gave a slow, pitying smile. "Your father stuck his nose where it didn't belong, just like you." "You worked with them," she said. "You sold us out." He shrugged. "This town was dying, Donovan. The department's broke, the city council's corrupt, and the serpents pay better than any badge ever will. Your old man couldn't see that. Guess stubbornness runs in the family. Her finger tightened on the trigger. You're under arrest. Grady laughed. You think you're walking out of here? He raised his rifle, but before he could fire, a deafening shot rang out. Grady jerked forward, a red bloom spreading across his chest. Duke stood behind him, shotgun smoking in his hands. Should have stayed retired, Lieutenant, Duke growled. Grady collapsed, the rifle slipping from his hands. Silence fell over the yard, broken only by the sound of sirens in the far distance. Claire stood frozen. She had wanted justice, but not like this. Duke lowered his gun slowly. He was reaching for you. She nodded faintly, her breath trembling. I know. The Angels regrouped quickly, loading the captured crates into a truck. Claire peeked inside one guns, explosives, unmarked cash, enough to arm a small army. This is bigger than I thought, she whispered. Yeah, Duke said grimly, and it ain't over yet. By dawn, the depot was swarming with law enforcement. The serpents had scattered. A few were dead, most arrested. The DA arrived in a panic, barking questions, while state troopers combed through evidence. Claire gave her statement, but not all of it. She left out the part where Duke and the Angels saved her again. Without them, there wouldn't have been a bust at all. When the DA asked who shot Grady, she simply said, in the crossfire. By noon, it was over. Or so she thought. 3 days later, Claire stood by her father's grave for the first time in months. The morning wind carried the scent of rain and desert sage. She placed a single white rose on the headstone and whispered, It's done, Dad. I found the truth. Behind her, the low rumble of a motorcycle rolled up the hill. She didn't turn. Didn't think you'd show. Duke stopped beside her, helmet in hand. Didn't think you'd want me to. She smiled faintly. I wouldn't be here without you. He shrugged. You would have figured it out. You've got his fire. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the man behind the leather and scars. The man her father had once trusted with his life. What happens now? She asked. He gazed toward the horizon. We go back to our world. You go back to yours. People like us, we don't get peace, just temporary truces. She stepped closer. You ever think about crossing over, leaving this behind? He smirked. And do what, Coach Little League? She laughed softly. Could suit you. He shook his head. Nah, this is all I know, but you've got a chance to change this town, make it right. I'm off the force, she reminded him. Not for long, he said. Word travels fast. They know you didn't flinch. People respect that. She studied him for a long moment. And you, what do you get out of this? He met her gaze, a debt repaid. They stood there in silence for a while, the desert stretching endlessly around them. Then Duke reached into his vest and pulled out a small metal object, a silver badge, weathered and scratched. Her father's badge. He gave me this after that bar fight years ago, Duke said quietly. Told me to give it back when I finally did something right. Her throat tightened as he placed it in her hand. You did more than right, Duke. He nodded, then put his helmet back on. Take care of yourself, Officer Donovan. She smiled faintly. You too, President. He gave a low chuckle, revved the engine, and rode off down the dusty road. The roar of his Harley faded into the horizon, swallowed by the desert. Claire stood there for a long time, the badge warm in her palm, the wind brushing her hair. The world would never understand men like Duke, or women like her father. But she did. She looked at the sky and whispered, Rest easy, Dad. Justice finally rode in. And somewhere, far down the road, a line of bikes thundered in the distance, carrying ghosts, legends, and the unthinkable truth that sometimes the devil rides in to save the angel.